Have you ever wondered what a declaration of independence from guilt, obligation, and shame means to you? You might also be wondering what this has to do with diversity, equity, and inclusion. This actually illustrates the importance of how we show up in the world. We are excited to have you here with us today. This conversation is going to help us look beyond ourselves. I am looking forward to you all meeting my guest today. We value your feedback, your opinions. Please drop them in the chat. We intend to respond to as many comments and questions from our audience as possible. This takes a great deal from our team to pull off. So I'm eternally grateful for all of my loyal guests. Every week, we create new content and we look forward to you subscribing to our YouTube channel to keep up with us. My name is Rochelle Carrier, and I'm a DEI consultant and authoress of Emotional Intelligence, a toolkit for managing diversity, equity, and inclusion. The link to purchase the book are always in the comments or on LinkedIn. And for a living, I help organizations implement DEI plans in their framework and to change their cultural mindsets. Join us as we continue to share the different voices in the DEI space. Here today is the author of Just Do You. Welcome, Trina. I am so happy to have you here today. If you'd like to give the audience, a little background about what you do and how you came about to write this book.
Absolutely. And first of all, thank you so much, Rachel, for inviting me. We've been talking for quite some time, and things happen in the right season, in the right order. I'm Trina Ramsey, executive coach, author, nonprofit executive, and person who just is always positive. I got into coaching around 14 years ago. And I wrote this book, Just Do You, A Declaration of Independence from Guilt, Obligation, and Shame, as I was nearing my 50th birthday. I believe that everyone matters. I believe that we all have a lot more ahead of us than behind us, and that what we need is some encouragement to move things forward. So I work with women in particular who are over 40, in their fierce 40s, fabulous 50s, and sensational 60s and beyond, who have spent so much time focusing on other people's priorities. And sometimes we can lose ourselves. And that's why I launched the Just Do You Institute for Women's Empowerment. You're muted. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Technology these days.
Right.
So you said 40s, fabulous 50s is the only one I remembered because I'm 50. And you said sensational 60s. So what was it? What was the adjective you used for the 40s?
Fierce 40s.
Yours 40s?
Fierce 40s.
Fierce
I was
40s.
for an alliteration.
I love it. Fierce 40s. I want to jump right in. There's so many things I'd like to cover. And if you look at my book, it's all been completely marked by Post-its. I love reading and I love to be able to mark the, part of the paragraphs or even the sentences or the words that resonate with me more. So I want to start here on page 5. I love this because it resonated with me in the sense that since I'm a serial entrepreneur,
Yeah.
I find it very difficult to play. So,
Mhm.
this chapter is called All Work and No Play is Boring. So I'm going to read something which is really interesting. It says, somehow it has become the norm in our society to work all the time. In the traditional workforce, there is constant standard of always being available or always be available, particularly for salaried employees. Can we discuss that a little bit? Because here I understand that the reason for always being available is that we don't have legitimate boundaries,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? And this is how I understood it. But if you'd like to explain to the audience to tell us what is it to always be available and what does that mean to
Yeah.
us?
Well, I have to tell you, and this is perfect because it really does tie into the diversity, equity, and inclusion end of things. Our society is really about capitalism, and here in America, um, the ethos actually and around the world is based on white supremacy. So there is this space that we occupy that is about production and about our value being only based on who we are and what we produce in the world and the outputs. And so it creates this dynamic whereby employers just continue to expect more and more of their people. Downsizings happens, jobs get combined without rehiring, things of that nature. And I really think that it's up to us to own our worth and to draw those boundaries, as you mentioned. Uh,
Right.
and it can be very difficult because you might have, fear of losing your job, or, there's a lot of internal work we have to do in order to hold that for ourselves because our employers aren't going to do it. And the truth of the matter is, and I've been talking about this for a while as well, even entrepreneurs can get caught in that trap. And I have, especially when I wrote this book and I co-authored three others. So I was kind of in a churn space for a while. And I was what I described my own horrible boss. And so even if you work for yourself, you can still get caught up in that trap.
You mentioned something really interesting about self-worth.
Hmm.
How does that tie in with our self-worth? Is it that we don't feel validated, or is it that we're not validating ourselves and then establishing the boundaries? Because I think they both go together.
Hmm.
If we don't have that self-worth and know what value we bring to the table, then we won't have any boundaries because there's just never enough.
Yes, absolutely. And this is where coaches come into play. So do a little plug for us coaches, because it really is an inside out game. And, we are all, everyone is flawed. We have all had, challenges that we carried with us, whether it be from childhood or from difficult relationships, loss, things like that. And we can carry all of that within us. And we have to have an interruption. We have to be able to actually put in the work to face some of those things and to reprogram ourselves. And that's part of the reason I wrote the book. And I made it so that it was like more digestible, little bite-sized lessons because we're all busy, and I have a lot of books that I intend to read and start and don't finish and things of that nature. But at the end of the day, if we don't set boundaries for ourselves, if we don't take care of ourselves, nobody else will. And that's part of the reason why I have Declaration of Independence in the title, because we have to declare it for ourselves.
Right. And that's what it says here. It says a declaration of independence from guilt, obligation, shame, which is how I introduced the show. So it says it's stressful to feel compelled to check email, to work, or to work on a project from our sick bed, or while you are supposed to be spending quality time with your loved ones. That's a tricky one.
Mhm.
And I think with the smartphones today, it allows us to instantly, again, not create a boundary
Mhm.
to actually stop working because the phone allows us to always be on and available, and you show your status as available or working.
Yep.
And I know for me, what happens is I actually had to make a pact with myself and a commitment to myself to not sleep with the phone on my night table. So
Mhm.
now it goes into the home office, that's where it's charged, and it's actually off. And even if I receive messages or dings or emails, then I know that I can receive them in the morning once I wake up. And even that, even once you wake up, it's is that did you make time for yourself, for your spiritual work, for journaling? right?
100%.
And before I put it on, I have to mentally speak to myself and say, Rochelle, it's time to journal. It's time to do your spiritual work, light my candles, do whatever it is, my yoga before you turn on that phone. Because I know once I turn on that phone, then I'm shifting, I'm posting through, and I'm scrolling up, and I'm already in work mode, and I've done nothing for myself.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And it does take that commitment yourself, because the world's going to keep coming at you, and I think that's part of it's like a blessing and a curse. Technology, we've gotten to such a point, with this pandemic and everything. The fact that we do have all that technology available to us is what helped us to keep moving and be able to have flexible schedules and working from home and all those types of things. But we also saw people, like especially mothers, who got caught in that crunch because they're at home, their kids are at home, the kids are homeschooling now, remote schooling. They still have their job, so now they're trying to mother, teach, and work, and get burnout. You know, so it really is incumbent upon us to make those decisions ourselves, because otherwise it's just going to keep going. And I also have a message for managers, if I may.
Absolutely.
I think that another thing that happens is if you are a person in power and you're sending people emails in the middle of the night, or on the weekend, or while you're on vacation, then you are also sending your people, your team, a message that, oh, this is what's expected of me. And then it creates more pressure for the employee to kind of live up to an unrealistic expectation that the manager is setting.
Correct.
Mhm.
And you mentioned a burnout, and that's exactly what causes the burnout, because if you haven't established guidelines, right? Managers have to establish guidelines and say, this is working time, including text messages and WhatsApps and emails. It's going to be between 8 and 5.
Exactly.
After 5 or after 6, it's family time, and I won't be sending any emails. So, like you said, it needs to come from the top and then trickle down, because if that's not spoken, then there's not going to be any clear expectations.
Exactly. Exactly. It gets really fuzzy. And then people, and it goes back to that self-esteem thing, even if it's never spoken, people can receive a message inadvertently that
Right.
says, oh, this is what is expected of me, because that's what they're doing.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And I found this again on the same page, and I won't spoil it for everybody, but it's very much. Actually, can you explain how the book is set
Oh,
up? Because I love the reading and the application of the
sure.
work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I purposely, as I said, my target audience, we're all busy women. So I purposely set it up so that it was digestible. There are 50 life lessons, and each lesson is about a page to a page and a half. There's also a section called Why This Matters Now, because I also believe that we grow. And especially when you hit 40, there's something that happens. And then it happens again when you get hit 50, that you kind of grow into yourself, and you realize that there's more up to you than what you have been allowing. So I make sure to speak to that season. And then there's a journal prompt, because I also believe that, like, I don't have all the answers. Like, yes, I wrote the book, but you actually have to bring it into who you are. And you might disagree with me on some things. So write about how it feels for you. And then I end it with what I call make it your own, which is either like a quote or an affirmation or something that is very bite sized, one line or two, to kind of carry with you moving forward.
Right. Absolutely. Before we go on, Anna Colagrossi, thank you so much for joining in. She
Hi.
has Hi Anna. She has a question, and she said, "How do you feel about those email signatures that mention my working hours are different than yours?"
Oh, um, those words specifically, my working hours are different than yours.
Right. My working hours are different than yours.
Is this about time zones maybe, or
you see, again, it's not clear,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? Because we're trying to figure it out ourselves on
Right.
our end. So those emails, my working, yeah, it's in quotes. She writes exactly, my working hours are different than yours. It could be the time zone, but again, it's very vague. So I
Right.
think it's important to
Right.
ask, what is your time zone and what hours do you work? So I can make sure that if I'm going to send an email to you, it's going to be between those hours.
Right. Right. What I would adjust that signature to say is that I am on X time zone, and and I work from this to this, and whether it's specific time, which is what I'm on, or Eastern time, which is what you're on, so that the recipient also sees, can adjust for themselves with
Right.
that, what happens on their end.
Absolutely. Absolutely. She says, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you, Anna, for joining in.
Absolutely.
And then, yet, that's it. You mentioned, when we get older, I realize now that I'm so conscious of my time
Mhm.
and that I value it much more than when I did when I was a lot younger.
Mm,
That I find that I'm more in the moment
mm,
than my mind thinking of the 20 things that I have to do on my list. Because it almost feels like I'm understanding the importance of time and the value of family and the value of friends, like the true value,
yeah.
the un the value. When I say value, it's really, are we connecting without the phone? Right?
Right.
Are we sitting
Right.
at the dinner table and there are no phones at the dinner table? Are we going to the restaurant uninterrupted is the word I was looking for. And are we going to the restaurant, or are all of us going to be on our iPhones while we're at the restaurant, apparently enjoying family time?
Right. Supposedly. Right.
Right?
While
So
we're still plugged into everybody else.
while we're still plugged into everybody else.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it's amazing that you mentioned that, because this is how I feel that I'm at right now. And then you said, I know how valuable exactly it is for me to take time off and recharge. I will do a better job of taking care of my mind, body, and spirit. I understand that if I don't prioritize this, no one else will do it for me.
100%.
And you
100.
can't get that time back.
Exactly. Exactly. And what happens with life, it's like hours turn to days, turn to weeks, turn to months and years. Look, it's July already. It feels like it happened in the blink of an eye. And that's how our life goes. So we have to be really intentional about how we spend our time. And it's not to be like so rigorous where you're, micromanaging every hour of the day, but it's more about what you just described, like deciding what matters, and you're betting with your time. So where are you gonna place your priority, and what also doesn't get your time so much. When you had said about getting up early, I just recently shifted to having miracle mornings, when I'm calling them.
I
And
love
this
that.
is a self-described night owl who would never like get up in the morning and work out, because I was like too kind of like stuck in my own story about, oh, that's too early. I can't do this. But I actually got up and did we started at 9. I got up and took a walk and showered and got dressed before our session this morning. So I do that on a regular basis now, and I'll sit by the water and meditate a little bit. I didn't do that today because I wanted to make sure I was ready, but it's part of my routine, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I gave that gift to myself. So I'm in my 50s like you, so we always get to learn and grow and adapt and choose.
Absolutely. Doesn't that feel great? I
Hmm.
do that sometimes, to be able to go by the water,
Hmm.
and the water has a sense of, there's such a calming energy, and you hear the ocean, especially when there's nobody around. I love it when it's quiet. And I think it's the time when thoughts, moments of creativity, things you wouldn't have thought of, happen to appear when you've given your brain that space to
Exactly.
actually rest.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
So I find this one was interesting also for me. And I'm going to go right down to page 9. It says, if you want things to change, you've
Mm,
got to put your butt on the line.
yes.
And we were talking a little bit about this. It says prayer is a powerful tool when you are stepping outside of your comfort zone. Some people can lean on their faith when bad times arise, but when you are working up the courage to take on something new, having a prayer and a connection to God are powerful tools to have it in your arsenal.
Yes.
When we talk about prayer, because that's something that's personal to everybody,
Mhm.
right? You can have a prayer, I have affirmations
Mhm.
and prayers. And, here we we definitely understand that it's a powerful tool. Why do you think it's such a powerful tool?
Yeah, I think faith is one of the things that anchors us when life gets rocky. And we know that none of us are immune to hard times, whether it be financially or loss. Death is a constant. Someone's going to pass away. We're going to leave at some point. We don't know how it's going to show up, right? But it's important to actually feed yourself and have faith in the future by reminding ourselves of the blessings that we already have and of things that we've gotten through in the past. And like any other muscle, just like, getting up earlier to exercise and turning off that phone and removing yourself, it's something that you have to be intentional about, because what happens is if you're not kind of like filling your cup along the way, and something can come along and just take your legs out from under you. But if you already are more grounded in your faith life and your faith practices and more centered, then you'll be able to withstand that storm easier. And you also have the belief that you can get through it. And I think, I feel sad for people who don't have some type of faith practice. There's so many different ways of doing that, having a spiritual anchor, because those are the people who they lose a lot of money and then they go and jump off of something, you know because they don't have something that's holding them and keeping them
Grounded.
understanding what is possible. Yeah.
Right. And I think it also allows space to be less reactive,
Yes. 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 Yeah.
right? You can actually go through a more objective process to lead you to a solution and
Yeah.
then step back and try to understand what it is that can be done that could be different
Yes.
if we didn't have that faith. And for everybody who practices different faiths, it still all means the same thing.
Hmm.
Whatever is personal to you, and whatever allows you to feel grounded in your spirit, to
Yes.
be able to like you said, Trina, to weather those storms, because I think we all go through them, and we all go through challenges, and it's how we go about finding those solutions is
Yes.
what is really important.
Yes. Absolutely. I couldn't agree
Right.
more.
Oh, this I learned to do a couple of years ago only. Actually, I actually put it into practice. There was a book that I remember was in I grew up in Montreal, and
Mhm.
my mom always had a library of books, and there was a book that was called Living Guilt Free. I read it, but I didn't understand it, but I knew there was something I needed to do within myself to be
Mhm.
able to live guilt free.
Mhm.
And this is interesting because this chapter, 30 years later, I'm reading it again, and it's
Ah.
saying live with no regrets.
Mhm. Mhm.
Right? So it says when I was younger, used to weigh all my decisions carefully. I was afraid of offending people or making the wrong decisions. I spent more time than I care to admit worrying about what people would think of me. As I
Mhm.
got older, I have realized my happiness is up to me and nobody else. Why do you think that people put happiness in material things?
Oh boy. Why? I think that I heard a quote a while ago where someone said that people either collect things or experiences, and I think it's really just a matter of kind of what you like. When you think about retail therapy and things like that, shopping, but life is actually in connection. It's in relationship. So for me, I really enjoy having experiences, whether they're on my own, like, we talked about doing the walks, I've gone on vacation on my own, or really carving out time to be with other people who are important to me, whether it's my partner, my son, my daughter, taking trips to make sure that I'm reconnected with my family, things like that. But material things fade. You can't take money with you. So, all those things really don't actually add to the value of your life. And
Right.
they make life more fun, like if you have a private jet. I don't know about this life, but you can go and jet off on a moment's notice. That certainly will add to your experience. Um, but you also can't take that with you either.
Absolutely. And I find that's probably one of the things that a lot of people need to let go of is the attachment to those material things. And I think also what happens is you're constantly looking for that happiness through that thing, right? And like you said, it's the retail therapy. It's like, okay, I'll go buy a pair of shoes or a pants, and then it fulfills you temporarily for that moment,
Mhm.
but then you have to go back to the store
Right.
because then there's a void that you're probably not fulfilling through faith,
Right.
could be, right? When you think about it, and then you go back and I need a watch, or I need it. And then there's constantly a necessity for having something else. But going back to which this this I practice all the time. I stopped worrying about what people thought of me because I realized everyone's going to have a thought,
Mhm.
everyone's going to have an opinion, and I can't control everybody's opinion or everybody's thought or judgments of me. And that once I let that go, I found that I lived a more authentic life,
Yes.
right?
Yes, it's so freeing. It's so freeing. And, you know, I grew up under, very difficult circumstances, and I was the oldest of three sisters. And so there was a lot that was like on me. There was a lot about like proving myself and making sure that I achieve. And, so I had a lot of people who were kind of like rooting for me, you know what I mean? Which is such a blessing, but also like living according to what other people expect of you also can make you feel like you don't want to make a wrong move because you don't want to, offend someone or disappoint them. And, that can just kind of take you down a rabbit hole, and you look up and realize that this is not the life that I wanted because you're not really listening to yourself. And I do think that that does come with maturity.
Yeah.
Although I will say my daughter, who has been a pistol since she was 2 years old, she got that message a lot earlier. And I'm really grateful for that, you know.
It was an experience that she had that propelled her to
I'm not sure because I mean, she's just always been very sure of herself. Um, need I say cocky, and so now she just turned 29. So you kind of see that kind of like the fire kind of starting to turn into like this self-assurance while she's making moves and
Mm.
navigating her life. But there's always been this kind of confidence to the point where she would like get in trouble at school because she's advocating on somebody else, and then she's the one that gets sent to the principal, but it's something that I admire. I was like, okay, it's driving you crazy right now, but it will serve her, you know. And I actually admire that she figured some of that stuff out earlier in life. It took me a long time.
Of course.
Mhm.
Oh, I'm completely guilty of that too. It did. You know what though? I really believe that our destiny is probably predetermined,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And our time will always come when we're going to learn something, whether it's going to be, at 50, at 60, at 70, there's always an aha moment, Oprah calls them,
Yes.
as to when it's going to happen. And for her, it happened to be at 20, you said at 20, 29. And we had our daughter, I was 43. And so very late bloomer. And I think a lot of my realizations happened when I became a parent.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
when I was doing all the self-reflective work before and not putting it to practice, because your book allows me to put it to practice because I'm a journal writer to begin with. I think now I had to be so aware and conscious of who I was and what I was modeling and what I was saying,
Yes.
that I I can't even imagining not having her, because now I realize how much more I've grown into becoming the person that I am.
Yeah. 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 Parenthood really changes your lens and also makes you, recenter around what matters. And like you said, you're thinking about not just yourself, but this little person that you're growing. And I used to pray, I didn't really care so much about what my kids ended up doing in life, but I just wanted for us to help them to grow and be good people. And they both
Absolutely.
are. And so I'm grateful.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Have more fun more often. This was really good, and we talked about this a little earlier.
Mhm.
And here I underline, but one of the secrets to life is to choose what to focus your time and attention on.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that can make all the difference. People
Mhm.
who know me know I work hard and very hard, but I also play hard. Honestly, I would like to travel more, so I'm working on doing something. I'm assuming this was written a couple of years
Yeah,
ago.
it was 2017.
It was 2017. Okay. So things have
Yeah,
changed.
before the pandemic. BP or BC before Corona.
Before Corona. Exactly. I love that. BC before Corona. So you said your daughter and your son are a source of joy and happiness for you. You have so much fun together, including gut splitting, laughing till you cry silliness.
Mm,
They keep me young.
mm,
And then you ask the question to us as a reader, when was the last time you had fun? And I couldn't believe that I actually had to think about it,
mm,
because I have such a structure and a discipline on doing things, on the time to do them and how to do it, that I have a hard time unwinding that brain
mhm.
and then laughing a little bit more.
Yeah.
I find that a little difficult. My daughter could split herself in two,
Mhm.
and I get, or she'll do something. She wants to play tag, and I'm so in my head that I realize 5 minutes later that that's what she wanted to do. She wanted to play
Yeah.
tag. And again, it's not letting go of that work part of my brain to be
Mhm.
able to relax and to
Yeah.
laugh and to enjoy it a little bit. And so that's, you're saying, and going back to what I was talking about earlier, you're saying that is the source of happiness, because we were talking about the material things, but that
Yeah.
is the source of our happiness. Don't you
Yeah.
agree?
Absolutely. And I've been known to give play as homework to my clients. because as you said, time passes, so something you might do is kind of come up with a little short list of ways that you can play with your daughter and maybe build it into your routine a little bit, so that you can actually have more availability to that, especially when they're little like that. They just are
Right.
such a source of joy and
They are.
spontaneity and wonder, so we definitely want to take advantage of it.
Absolutely. This was very interesting. I suggest that everybody buy this book. It's a game
Oh, thank
changer
you.
and a life changer, only because it reaffirms what we should be doing for ourselves and putting ourselves first.
Yes.
That was my takeaway, is really, this is my time. I get up early, I go through the book,
Hmm.
I write. I do, and then I write through, what I'm thinking, how I'm feeling, and I follow your prompts religiously. And then I realize, because I'm putting pen on paper,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hmm.
it's making me feel more accountable
Ah,
for the things I
good.
need to continue doing.
Wonderful. Oh,
It's
that just makes me so happy.
oh, it's amazing. It's amazing. And I think every woman and man should pick this up. Gentlemen and women should buy this book, because it really speaks to a lot of us. And this was a big one. I'm jumping to page 44, stop settling.
Mm,
Oh
yes.
my word. This one is huge, and it really speaks to women. Why do women settle? And you said, okay, well, that's a huge generalization. So let me clarify. Some of us settle on a regular basis, right? On page 45, we put others' needs, wishes, and voices above our own and wonder why we're so miserable. I'll stop there. And I was watching Soul Sundays with Oprah, and it was actually 2017. Funny. Yeah, it's not a coincidence, complete synchronicity. Mm. With, I believe her name is Catherine or Christina Miss, and she wrote, all her books are number one bestsellers about the soul and the spirit and
Mm,
prayers.
mm,
And going back to what you said here, the reason why we are miserable is because we're not listening to ourselves.
yes. Yes.
And this is what she was saying in the
Yes.
interview that I was watching a couple of days ago. This is why we're so miserable. Like you said here, we put others' needs, wishes, and voices above our own. Trina,
Yes.
that is huge.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, again, it took me to nearly 50 to like collect all of this. Um, I was journaling. This is how the book came about. I was journaling, going back and forth to work. And I was like, you're about to turn 50. I bet you learned some things. And I started writing. And I got up to a list of 70 lessons. And I had tried to write a book as a coach using some of like kind of the coaching principles that we all, learn in our training and stuff. And it was not resonating. And when I looked down, I was like, this is the book. But this point in particular, it it goes back to that noise, if you're always on TikTok, if you're always on Instagram, if you're always on Facebook, if you're always comparing yourself to everyone else, and we know that those posts are staged, right? How many pictures does it take to get that perfect selfie to post on social media? And then we've got all the like I've got my Zoom set up to maximize, kind of like airbrushing and all that kind of stuff. um, it's not real. It's not real because everyone has their challenges. Everyone has the other things that are going on in their lives. And so if we are letting ourselves get um, our lives be dictated by what we are assuming things ought to be, and whether our spouse or our children or parents or um, people at work, our managers, if there are people who are kind of dictating our lives to us, then we are giving away our power. And for some people, it's a combination of all of those factors, and they just get smaller and smaller and smaller. And I experienced that myself when I was married, um, and it wasn't his fault. It was me just deciding that I had to be this way and I had to do this and we were married for 17 years and I kept changing myself and shrinking myself and shrinking myself until one day when I was going through a training that led to me becoming a coach, this amazing woman, her name is Robin Lynn. She's no longer with us, who's the founder of Momentum Education based out of New York. And she looked at me and she said, I see you. You're a powerful woman. Why are you keeping yourself so small? And it was because I had years of this trying to make myself smaller to make my husband more comfortable.
You were
And that,
dimming your light.
yes, yes, yes. And it wasn't like he was a tyrant or anything like that. It was just these kind of different little scripts that I had been following all my life. And we got married fairly young. My daughter, I was 28 when she was born, so like I kind of grew into all this like obligation and responsibility. And I thought that this is what you were supposed to do. And I was just giving away more and more and more of myself. So this is why I'm so passionate about it.
Right.
Thank you for
And
letting me tell you that little story.
oh,
Awesome.
it's great because I think it's a lot of women's stories. We tend to, shrink ourselves and, put our heads underneath the sand to be able to focus on the responsibilities because we think that's what we're supposed to do. And you reached your breaking moment where you realize that you want to be the better version of Trina, and how can you be that better version? And it's okay because it had to be through the relationship, because I think that's where we grow
Yeah.
or we get stunted. It's going through the experience. If we didn't have that experience, if you didn't have that experience, you might have not have even written those books and co-authored the two or three others.
There you go. Thank you.
You
Yeah.
see what I mean?
Yep. One of my favorite scriptures is all things work together for the good of those who love the Lord. And I see that over and over again. We have to some of those experiences form us and help us to learn and grow, and or not, right? Or not.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's amazing, I think, how experiences can, exactly what we're talking about, can help us grow into a better version of ourselves and to be able to understand not what we did wrong, but why it is we did the why,
Mhm.
and we went through that experience. And it always gives you a great reflection of where to modify and where to adjust, and where it is that you can shine a little bit more. I
Yes.
think we all have a place in this world to be able to shine, and how to be, how to come to the tables being our authentic selves. And it seems like you're living your best life now.
Yeah, I absolutely could say that. I absolutely can say that. I feel freer. I feel more like in my body and less in my head. I feel more of a sense of, hope and possibility and fun, you know.
Right.
So yeah, I'm just grateful.
Mm, that's I think it's so important. And that was the point as well where you told yourself to not settle. Did you find that you were settling? We don't need to know the details, but
Mhm.
did you think in your spirit, now that you are where you are, that you settled to be that version of Trina?
Yeah, for sure. I think that I had, you know, decided what it meant to be married and what it meant to be a mother. And I was, I will say at this point now, knowing that both my ex-husband and I were both conflict avoiders, and that created an issue. And kind of where we would like sweep things under the rug, and then all of a sudden it's like a teeny tiny little thing that somebody blows up or whatever. And I think that there was a point where I thought I had already surpassed what, someone who grew up with the background that I grew up with, that I was already living kind of like beyond what I thought I could. And I had no idea what else was available to me. And so, yeah, I was settling and I was deciding that, okay, this is what my life is and this is what it's supposed to be. And now I know that that's not the case. We are always making choices every single day. We and choosing not to, you mentioned putting your head in the sand, that is a choice too. Delaying something, trying to act like something isn't true,
Hmm.
ignoring the signs of what the universe is telling you, um, until your back's against the wall and you have to make a choice. All of those things happen. Um, and we can decide in a moment, no, I don't want to do it that way. I can change. And sometimes they are very hard choices. It doesn't have to be about divorce. It can be about what your career is. It can be about where you live. It can be about, whether or not you are going to go ahead and start your podcast or write your book or, shift gears, embrace more of what you love, embrace more of who you love. That's really where the juice of life is.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I got a little preachy there.
I'm sorry.
I got a little preachy there for a minute.
No, it's absolutely true. I think it resonates. I really believe it resonates with a lot of people. And going back to what you said, we're making many choices, and our choice to not take our heads out of the sand is a choice,
Mhm,
and it's a decision.
mhm,
And now, you know, I like to believe that in order for us to continue creating and being our authentic selves is to really show up intentionally,
yes, yes, yes.
right? These are my intentions. When I intentionally I bought your book last year, Trina, and I only started reading it mm, when I reached out to you maybe a month ago. It
Yeah.
literally sat right there, and I had this part looking at me. Oh, no. Exactly. For 1 year. And then finally, I realized now I have the space. I had given birth to the podcast after working for so many years in corporate. And, with the murder of George Floyd, there was a lot of things I had to process and revisit, and
Mhm,
things that I had not made peace with. I
mhm.
all the racial suffering, I had not made peace with it until he was murdered. And then I always, every time I came into my home office, I would look at the book, and I had no thoughts. I looked at it and I thought, okay. And it happened finally a month ago. And when I opened it, I thought, "Oh, why didn't I do this last year? I probably was not ready
'Cause it wasn't the right time.
because
Things
it
happen the way
wasn't."
they're supposed to.
Absolutely. And now this book resonates with me again, like I said at the beginning of this podcast, because I am already a journal writer. I've been writing in diaries since I was 12, and then older. Now they're more positive, and there's more gratitude, which I impart to Sophia. I always ask her at the end of the day, what are the 5 or 10 things that you're grateful for?
Mm,
What's your favorite part of your day, the least favorite part of the day, so that she can
mhm.
have an understanding of who she is, and to be able to understand that if that's going to be her prayer, then that's what it's going to be.
Yeah. That's beautiful. I'm so glad you're pouring into your daughter like that at such an early age. It's going to make such a big difference in her life. She's lucky to have you.
Oh,
Blessed, not lucky.
ah, thank you so much. What's interesting is that I think, like you said, it comes at a place at a time. I was really ready to dive into the book, and I'm so happy I did. I really want everybody to go out and purchase it, and to,
Mhm.
you know what it does? It reignites the fire and the passion and the creativity and the values that we already have in us.
Mhm.
And it makes me remember what
Mhm.
I continuously have to do, because
Mhm.
putting yourself first is practice. It's not something I was comfortable doing,
Yeah. And for a lot of women,
right?
for a lot of women and some men as well.
Right.
I mean,
Absolutely.
it's my target audience, but I'm really clear. These are very kind of basic life lessons, that are available too. I had someone told me that I should um, kind of target it to younger people as well. So
Oh, I'd be
is
the first person to buy that book, because I'm always looking for new journals for Sophia. She's already went through 4 journals.
that right? Oh my
She
gosh,
has. Yes, there's a gratitude journal for kids that we buy on Amazon.
I love
And on
it.
the first 3 sentences are 3 things that you're grateful for. Again, favorite part of your day. And then on the bottom, it has a big box, because she's only 7, so it has a big box, and it says draw your favorite part of the day. So she has to
Oh,
actually put it into writing. So sometimes there's a slide or a park or something she did with her dad. It's beautiful. And I make it my mission and hers that she has to go to it every day, either in the
mm,
morning. And if there's not time in the morning, because, we're always doing something, that it has to be in the evening, or now that, there's no school and there's camp, she makes it a priority. But and she's only 7. So she's been writing in her journal since she was 3.
ah, I love that.
I promise. Since
Love
she
that.
was 3.
Yeah,
Hmm.
my gosh. Um, that you're building emotional intelligence in her. You're anchoring that in her. Go, mom.
Um,
Go, mom.
yeah, it's you know, it's probably we could probably talk about this for another hour. There's so much awareness now that I have, and so many cycles, from my childhood, that I refuse to, not refuse, but I'm more aware of the things that I want to work on for her.
Yeah, yeah,
Like you said, she needs to have the tools, and that's what the podcast is about, to have the tools to navigate race and gender in the workspace and
mhm,
in society.
yeah,
We have to those tools are very valuable, and they're not taught in schools.
no,
School is very academic in very many ways, but I think the emotional intelligence aspect is something that has to be built within us, and for us to have a broader understanding of how to show up
yeah,
as better leaders.
yeah. It's that inner work, and I think that when we grew up, it was just we were taught to do your best. Especially people of color. You've got to work harder. You've got to show. You've got to do more in order to get less. And there was a lot of other types of survival skills that were anchored into us.
Right.
And then we're in a new day, and it's a different moment, thankfully, for our future generations. So,
Absolutely. Trina, this has been a fabulous conversation. I
oh,
love the synergy
God.
between us. It was great. It was
Thank you
great.
so much for having me. This has been really a blast. And, as I was reflecting, I was sharing and letting people know that this was happening. I was like, wow, this was almost 5 years ago. It was in August of 2017. And
Oh,
I have I did a Facebook post when the first box of books arrived, and I opened it, and I had my book launch party that night. But so it's really cool to be able to kind of look back and kind of breathe more life into it, because you know how it is. Like, life goes on, you're doing other things. So
absolutely.
yeah. So thank you so
Absolutely.
much for
Oh, the
having
pleasure.
me, and thanks
Oh,
for buying the book. And I'm so glad you're having such a great experience. And thanks for sharing your experience with everyone else.
oh, it was wonderful. As we're reaching the top of the Diversity Connects Us hour, I want to thank you all for coming to our show today and for listening in. Please reach out to us if you have any questions, and always stay tuned as we share with the varied voices in the DEI space. Thank you again, Trina.
Thank you so much, Rachel.